Hi, welcome to Swishing Mindsets. This is Anuradha, and today we are speaking to Arundhati Ghosh, a practicing polyamorist and author of All Our Loves Journeys with Polyamory in India, published by Aleph. She's also a cultural practitioner and social activist. I'll start with Ghalib's couplet that Arundhati has mentioned in her book. हजारों ख्वाहिशें ऐसी कि हर ख्वाहिश पे दम निकले बहुत निकले मेरे अरमान लेकिन फिर भी कम निकले. So, welcome Arundhati.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Anuradha, for having me on Switching Mindset.
Yeah. So, started with a couplet because I think, you've said that that resonated with you when you were trying to come to terms with, trying to find expression for being polyamorous,
Yeah.
right? So that's it
Yeah.
started with that and it says it so well. So tell me, first of all, what is polyamory? And to right at the start, like, what is it not? Because, we hear a lot about situationships these days,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
So,
So, yeah.
yeah, so what is polyamory? Now, this is where the beauty starts from. That polyamory can be defined as people who practice it want to define it. So, within a very broad parameter, you could decide what your polyamory is going to look like. So, I can share with you what my polyamory looks like. So, I have defined it for myself saying that it is the desire, the ability, and the practice of loving more than one person simultaneously with or without sexual intimacies, but with the consent of all. So, and there are bits and parts in that. Why I specifically talk about desire, ability, and practice is because a lot of our desires could be limited by our abilities, which comes from many kinds of privileges that some of us have and some of us don't have. And then the practice of it is important because I feel in some way most people I have met in my life are polyamorous in their head. They do love more than one person. You can't live an entire lifetime loving just one person in a particular way. But whether you would want to have the ability and the privilege and the circumstances to actually practice it makes the cut or makes the difference. So that's why I say all the three, desire, ability, and practice, is important for me to be a polyamorous person. And it's interesting you talk about situationship because that's a word I have only heard from my young friends very recently, and I looked it up and I realized that there are some words that are defined by what it is not. So when I tried to read up on it, I saw it is not romance and it is not fully casual. So I'm trying to imagine this vague space between these two things, that it is not just friendship, it's more than friendship, it's less than love. And then what stays in between is such a huge space, actually. So, is it the becoming of a relationship? I don't know. I am not an expert on situationship. So, but what I can tell you about polyamory is that it is very defined. It is love. Some people might define it with sexual intimacy, some people may not. There are lots of asexual, even aromantic people within polyamorous communities. But I think here the two words, poly and amory, are important. That it's many and it is love. And so therefore you can understand why it may be different from a lot of other non-monogamous ways of life that it can be. So that's also something I wanted to say is technically the word gamy means marriage. So when you say monogamy, it's single marriage, and therefore I make that distinction that it's monoamory. If you're not talking about marriage, if you're just looking at love, then if you're looking at one love, it's monoamory. There are some people who would say they are serial or like one by one. So they love one person, but it ends, and then they love another person. So they see their life that way. That's somewhere in between. And then you have polyamorous who believe that they have the desirability and practice of loving more than one person at a time. Yeah, that's how I would probably define it. There are I mean, the book talks at length about what it is not, because there are just so many misconceptions. It's not just about sex. It's not shallow. It does believe in building long-term nurturing relationships. It is not something that you do because you haven't found the one in your life and you're just doing time pass with it to see. It is not a swamvara where you're just dating multiple people so that you choose one. All these are valid ways of love. I mean, I have deep respect for anybody who loves, because I think love is so hard. All kinds of love. One, two, three, many, any love, any gender, any sexuality. Love itself is hard, but it does get harder if you're going to be in relationships and love that are not approved by the majority, or not the conventional or not the traditional ways of being. It gets harder slightly. And in some cases, as we know, in India or anywhere else, actually, love is political. You can get killed for loving the wrong kind of person, whether it is across religion or caste or gender or sexuality, all of that, right? So it's not to say that polyamory is any better or worse, cooler or hotter, more progressive or less progressive. It's just to say it is one of the ways in which some of us love and lead our lives, and it is as valid as any other way.
Yeah, thanks for explaining it so well. And you, in your book, I must add that, we'll discuss it later, that you've written
Yeah.
a lot of red flags if you're getting
Yes.
into a,
Yes.
polyamorous
Yes.
relationship.
Yes.
And it's not just a substitute for somebody who wants to cheat,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it's not convenience.
Yes.
Suddenly you wake up and,
Absolutely.
your
Yeah.
partner finds out you've been cheating and you say, I'm just polyamorous.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
not
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah.
So we'll get into that. But,
Yeah.
what jumps out at me is like, we've all been conditioned for this one true love. Like
Yes.
last year on Valentine's Day, I spoke to an author who spoke about finding that one true love and coming home to one person,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So we all kind of, I'll say, conditioned, or we believe in it, or
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
search for it.
Yeah.
And so, when you say that love, the entire time you were explaining, you were talking about love. Uh,
Yeah.
so, there's many loves, and this in your book also you've written about how, for you, what brings you joy is exploration,
Yes.
right? It's a
Yeah.
journey. It's not like a
Yeah. Yeah.
destination,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
I think I've gone through your book too much, so it's just in my head right
I'm so
now.
glad. I'm so glad, Anuradha, that you have gone through the book. Yeah.
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 So you've written about the relationship escalator, right? So
Yeah.
you don't have
Yes.
all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did I
Yeah.
get it right?
Yes. Completely.
Yeah.
Yes. Huh.
Okay. So, so your relationships, I'm assuming, doesn't have that escalator. So if you can talk about love and loving many people, and that relationship escalator that is missing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how is it if it's just a journey?
Okay.
And how
So
do you feel love for so many people? I mean, sorry, if I'm sounding
no, no, no. You're sounding
rude or
perfectly
something. Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
And these are perfectly fine questions. Any question is actually about love. The more questions we ask, I think the problem begins when we stop asking these questions and take things as legacy, or take them for granted, or just take them because that's how they have been, for how we have been used to seeing them. So, you talked about one true love. Now, for the longest time, I've thought that in this phrase, what gets my goat more, the one part or the true part? What do I dislike more? And I think I dislike both equally. I'll give you the reasons. The reason I dislike true is because when you call something true, you're calling everything else false or not quite so true. And that's a great disservice to all the other loves that we have, which means when people who look for this one true love finally find the love that they will settle with, are they actually saying that every other love in their lives, or those people who mattered, or those relationships they had from where they also gained so much, and what has made them what they are today in bits and parts, are all false? So, it just hurts. It hurts the whole idea of relationship building between people. If the moment you found something that you want to settle down with, you call everything else false. But because by calling something true, that's exactly what somebody does. The other thing is my big issue with one. Um, John Berger, who's written a lot about art and philosophy, has a fantastic line. And I think it holds true for me and many people like me, not just in our love lives, but in life in general, in politics, in everything that we see around us. That he said that let not a single story be told as if it is the only one. So that's my problem with one. Because the moment you say one, your entire energies are focused on homogenizing something. And today, we are seeing it around us, even in politics. This whole thing about one language, one culture, one nation, leading to one leader, everything. So I think that I have a deep distaste for one, the idea of one. I've always been someone who's believed in the many, who's believed in the collective, who's believed in diversity, who's believed in a polyphonic universe of multiple ways of being, multiple ways of thinking and coexisting together. Now, this is a deeper side of the one, my problem with the one part, but in a more philosophical problem that I have, political problem that I have. But the more practical one is this. At the moment you said, so a friend of mine very jokingly once told me when I started writing about polyamory, कि अरे हमें तो एक नहीं मिलता तुमको इतने कैसे मिल जाते हैं I can't find one, how do you find many?
Yeah,
And in
true.
the same joking manner, playful manner, I said, the moment you stop looking for one, you will find many. Because when we go looking for one, the list that we have for that bazaar, when we are going looking for one, that list of needs and desires is huge. It's absurd. It not only has what we need and want, it also has the fears that have been put into us. We want guarantees from so many things. We want, it's like the ruins of everybody's broken dreams is on that list. So that list for looking for these are the things I want. My mother used to say, are you going to Kumartuli? Kumartuli is the place where they make in Kolkata, they make the images of the
Idol.
gods, etc., the idols, right? So saying, with that kind of list, you can only get one ready-made for you.
And that burden
Because
on
this,
that one person, right?
that one, and
Yeah,
everything is focused on that one person. Now, the thing is, imagine a world where you're going out with this very sharp, strong, long, absurd, harsh list of demands. Everybody else also has a list like that. So when people are looking at you, they're looking at you with that criticality. They're looking at you with that harshness and ticking off all these things that you have to fulfill. And when you don't, the sense of inadequacy, the sense of self-loathing is tremendous. So this idea of this one, that you have this one person, is problematic from all these angles. The burden of it is just too much. And I've always felt that instead of doing that, if we could find sparks of things that we like, passion, courage, compassion, commitment, in honesty, care, in the people that we meet, and find sparks that connect with the sparks that we have in us. They don't have to match all the sparks. They can match some of the sparks we have. And we look towards building enduring long-term relationships. That works much better for me. And you said, where does one find all the love? Interestingly, and I mentioned this in the book, nobody has ever asked a mother with more than one children, where does she find all the love? This question only comes up when we are thinking of partners. My response to that is, why should it come up when you're thinking of partners? Because in any case in your life, you do love your parents, you do love your partner, you do love your kids, you do love your, if you're married, your in-laws and larger families that you take on, your friends, your community. There is enough love. So why does this question of where is the love coming from come when it is about a partner? And I think it is deeply embedded in the way monoamory or monogamy has over time embedded itself in our psyche. And I see that as a result of four things, really, and the book talks about that. Patriarchy, certainly, because monogamy was required in a certain way. The woman specifically had to have one husband so that you knew whose child it was, right? It's very clear why and where the inheritance needed to go. So it's financial, economic, patriarchal, family reasons. Colonization and Christianity together, because when colonization and Christianity that believed in this one God and outside of this God, everything else is false idea, and came into different cultures that were polyphonic, multi sort of God-led or multi-power-led cultures anyway, it sort of made this demand of oneness from conjugal lives as well. And of course, there is capitalism that benefits more from all of this put together. So I see monogamy and the attachment to monogamy and it becoming like the majoritarian thing as a result of all these historical and sort of social reasons end of the day. And of course, I'm not a scholar. I have just tried to understand them from a very practical point of view. So even in the book, you will not find this into a scholarly analysis, but there are scholars who've done deep work. I've read some of them, tried to understand it, and I've distilled what I could in the book so people like me can understand, who are not academics, but who need to know the reasons why we are where we are. Coming back to your question about the escalator. Now, you know what happens? And I'll give you a very heteronormative, typical cis way of monogamous way of looking at the world. Boy meets girl, boy likes girl, girl likes boy, a few dates. Then you check out each other sexually if your culture is permissive of that or, that kind of situation. And then what's the thing? The escalator is you're constantly asking what next. So next is what? Girl waiting for boy to propose, mostly. Then engagement, then shadi, then kids, then you're growing old together. This is the escalator that you're on. You can't hop off this escalator. It is an expected escalator that you're on, going from one thing to another. But imagine relationships where you could define the journey yourself and what that journey is going to be. And that journey is going to be more about what the two of you want to discover with each other, rather than an escalator that has been set. Now, yes, there are many people who want that escalator. That is what they want also. And it's fine if that's what they want. But to expect that everybody is going to want that escalator itself is a problem. What also happens, I think, in this is that you are unable to define the relationship that you want just between those people, 2 or 3 or more. It has to fit into the design that's been provided. You can customize. You can thoda sa customize it this way, that way, but more or less it has to fit that. So, for example, today many people decide, oh, we are going to be child-free. We don't want kids. That's fine. But they're still fighting that battle because the escalator tells you the next stop is child stop. So everybody else is asking you about it, etc., right? Also, there's a marriage stop because you have to get married at a particular time. And so I think this is the expectation that everybody will fit into this mold is itself problematic. And I think polyamory allows you to do these kind of definitions.
Yeah, the way you're putting it, it sounds less transactional somehow, right? Because you don't have a shopping list that you're going out with that, I want one person and there's no escalator, like you said. There are no stops. So the stops are decided by you if you want it.
Yeah.
So is it really as great as that sounds, this fluid way and, as wonderful? Or it can be, I'm sure, for some people.
Yeah, and so is monogamy. I mean, monogamy is
Of course,
wonderful as well for people for whom it works.
Yeah.
I know monogamous couples, some of them are super happy. They've decided this is the life they want to lead. And it doesn't work for me, but it works for them. And that's perfectly fine. And isn't it messy? Of course it is. Isn't it lonely? Of course at times it is. And the same holds for polyamory. That It's just that it has a different set of rules. And I find these rules more human, more, again, I find them, and many people like me find them more doable, more respectful of desire, more, overall a place that you can be the way you want to define it with your partners. So it is as beautiful as it is messy, like any love.
Yeah. So, you've also said that, I was going to ask you about love as infinite versus finite, that we just have this much to give to one person. And you've said in your book that, your journey in polyamory has taught you generosity,
Yeah.
right? And
Mm.
you've also been monoamorous, you've said,
Yes, I
no?
have. I
Yeah.
have. I was married for a little bit of time in between for a few years. And during that time, honestly, I didn't even know that I was polyamorous then, right? I was just discovering. But during that time, yes, I have. And there have been relationships in my life where I have been monoamorous for certain periods of time. But I think essentially from the inside, I am a polyamorous person. So I've tried monomery, and I think I'm happier when I have the freedom to love as many people as I want to. That doesn't mean, so that's another thing. It doesn't mean that every polyamorous person always has a bevy of partners. A polyamorous person can also have just one partner.
Yeah. It doesn't mean
It's
that if
just,
you don't have many, you're not polyamorous. Yeah.
no,
Or
it's
you
just
have
that
to
you could
have.
have no partner also. No, like
Yeah.
you could still be polyamorous because that's who you are. That's what you so it's something that you believe in, but you at that point you may not have a partner, or may have just one, or may have two. But the fact that you believe that it's possible for you to have, if you feel like that towards somebody, you can do it with honesty, with commitment, with um, consent of the people who are involved.
Yeah. So, Arundhati, if that's okay with you, I'd like to talk about your personal struggle. I'm sure it's been a
Mm.
struggle coming to this point and,
Yeah,
being comfortable with it and,
yeah,
realizing that you are polyamorous, as you said. So,
yeah,
how has
yeah.
it been, first realizing, accepting it, and
So
how it's
I
been for
think
you?
initially, because everything around you that talks about love, and in our culture we say that, oh, love is hush hush, but it's not. From the time I was a child, you're hearing all your Hindi movies are about love. All books and stories that you read are about love. All the best songs that you hear are about love. But everything tells you that there is one true love, and you have to finally find it. That's your goal in life. Like, wo nahi mila to, like everything else is bunker, right? So in that situation, when a young person sees that they are having feelings for more than one person, what you essentially think is that you are wrong. You don't think the society is wrong, right? You think there's something wrong with you. I thought of myself as shallow. Maybe I'm fickle. Maybe I don't have the tenacity. Maybe I don't have the strength of character, strength of mind, to stick to one person. I never asked, why should I? That question came much later. That why should I stick to one person if this is what I want to do? And if I'm being honest about it and open about it, why should I? Uh, but it took me a long time. So there's a friend of mine, Kaushik, who went to the US and was living um, among people who were polyamorous. That's why I first heard the word. And he gifted me a book called The Ethical Slut, which is, as polyamorous people all over the world will tell you, it's like a defining book. It is one of the first books, I think, that came out. And it came out in 1972, I think, the same year we were born. I
Yeah.
think it's that early in the 70s. And it talked about polyamory. How do you create non monogamous families, relationships? I started reading, but I still have doubts like, is it possible to do that in India? Given that our families are so into our lives here, we never really get rid of our families. Freedom means very different things in India than it means in other sort of cultures. Our community, caste, religion, all of them have their sort of pause in the lives that we lead, right? But then slowly I started meeting people here as well who do lead polyamorous lives. I started realizing that whether they call it or not, there are people leading different kinds of lives. Right? You must also understand that in our 20s, even the queer movement wasn't visible. People didn't talk about it. So you didn't have precedents to figure out how could you love differently. Over the last 20 years, the huge battles and the struggles that the queer movement has fought in India and the way the movement has actually shaped the many ways in which we think about love has been a huge boost to people who practice polyamory because there's so much to learn from that struggle as well. And I have as well. Um, it's only about, I think, 7, 8 years that I started writing publicly online in social media about polyamory because I felt there were so many things I was struggling with, learning, unlearning, that I needed to share it and also find out what others think. And Facebook and this hashtag polyamory is something I started, and then people would comment, agree, disagree. Um, some parts were hard because a lot there was initially abuse as well. People sent you nasty messages. They called you a slut. They called you all sorts of things, and some of it was threatening as well. But I must say those were far less than the conversations that got going. And I realized that I come from many of the privileges that other people don't have. I had the privilege of having a job, um, being well respected in society, having friends who understood where I came from, at least tried to understand my point of view. These are privileges we take for granted, a certain economic, background. Um, these are things we take for granted. And for any kind of life that you want to lead that is different from what the majority does, privileges are some things that you have to always keep in mind.
Yeah. It's interesting. I just want to go back to that, that you said that earlier because of paternity to be established and it was patriarchal, but you've also mentioned at the beginning of your book about a lot of ancient cultures and it's
Yeah.
still being practiced now. There was a
Yeah.
secondary father and a primary
Yes.
father, and there are,
Yes. I don't know how many of them still practice it. I'm not
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
I wanted to give these examples in the book so that, when before you come to contemporary
yeah,
polyamory, not
yeah.
to think of this as, oh, we have begun this thing. There was always cultures that looked at the fluidity of gender, sexuality, and relationships of romance and sex, and intimacies. And these intimacies, whether they were emotional, physical, sexual, intellectual, were functioned in a fluid manner within many communities. And so this is nothing new, or the way it is practiced under the current, sort of modern society is slightly different. But we also have our roots in very ancient cultures. And I had a lot of fun doing that part, and I realized that this is not an academic scholarly book. But I wanted to give examples so that people, it's just one paragraph about each of those cultures. And if you're interested, you could go Google and find out more.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, another thing, you're so open about, being polyamorous.
Yeah.
And now you've written a book as well, right?
Yeah.
But how, and your mom knows, right? You
Yes, then she
mom and
struggles to understand in her own
yeah,
language. And
yeah.
with my mother, I realized what she finds most difficult is the physical sexual angle of it. Being who
Can
she
imagine.
is, coming from a more traditional, but she is also quite a firebrand. She actually ran away with my dad, who was a lower caste person, and she came from a Brahmin family. So they were both studying medicine together, and they fell in love. And her family, like, they took her away into the village, locked her up. She ran away from there and then got married to my dad. And so, in her own way, she's broken traditions,
Yeah, yeah.
uh, but she finds it hard. So that's the part she finds hard. I think the physical sexual.
And one
Same
can
thing with the
understand. Yeah,
love. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's true. But how open can you be? Like, in your book, like, there's this couple where it's like the lady is polyamorous and she's married.
Yeah.
and she visits her, and she is the primary partner for both her partners,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And she says that I cannot, because she's married, she cannot introduce her other partner to
Of
other
course.
people. So
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
open can you be, personally, and even for other polyamorous people,
Yeah.
even though you're so open, can you openly introduce, okay, this is one partner, that's another partner, or you just say this is a friend? How does it work?
So it depends. So, okay. So polyamory, the consent part is very important, right? So how public you're going to be also depends on each of those people and their situations in life and where they are in society. So within polyamorous groups or support groups, people may be open to each other, but they're not open. They're at various stages of coming out, as they say. So say someone like me is probably as out as you can be in terms of, but what you have to remember is that I am a solo polyamorous person. I am not married. I don't have children. And therefore, these all are sort of privileges that allow me to be as open as I am. Today, if I have a child who goes to school and I have to worry about what his friends or their parents are going to talk about, I don't know how open I could be in that situation, right? So
Yeah.
I think the kind of life I have chosen has allowed me in some ways to be as open as I am. But again, with my partners, I need their consent to whether I can be open about how I introduce them. And I must say, I have both. Uh, I have had and have partners who uh, are open and out and who are not open and out, or are out only to some people. So it's a very delicate balance as well, because you also realize, especially while writing the book, I had to be very careful how much I give away of my life, because my life, fortunately, unfortunately, does not belong only to me. In a monogamous situation, you share a life with one person. But here I share a life with multiple people. And their um, sensitivities are also at stake. So therefore, I share as much as I can with the permission of those who are in my life, mostly. And otherwise, what I share is very um, made into a non-personal thing.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Hmm.
it's a it is about the privacy and sensitivity is about so many people, and therefore polyamorous people are also very worried about them being suddenly outed in a situation. So even if you meet a bunch of people in your polyamory group or support group, if you're meeting them in other social situations, uh, your relationship and how you interact with them has to be very mindful of their privacy and sensitivities as well.
Yeah. I guess that is in any relationship, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
More so in this because, in other relationships, um,
There's a social sanction. Yeah.
yes, the consequences are less harsh, I would say.
Yeah.
Here,
Yeah.
the consequences can be very damning for that person. So, if by mistake I take somebody's name, even in this conversation you and me are having, we are having such a relaxed conversation about this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And if by mistake I take somebody's name that I'm not supposed to, in the sense that I don't have their permission and I don't know consequences they are going to face, that's going to become very difficult. This will be public. And,
Knowledge. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then
Hmm.
and in such cases, one has to like then call you up. I have to call you up and say, hey, can you please edit that?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
one has to be mindful of those,
Hmm.
more mindful because of the consequences.
Right, right. You've also, used the term solo polyamorous. That's how you define
Yes.
yourself.
Yeah.
And what I
Yeah.
loved is what you wrote about loneliness. You said everybody faces loneliness. It is not, I mean, I'm paraphrasing that, it's
Yeah.
nothing to escape from. It's a condition like any human condition, right? Life
Yeah.
condition.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I fought this a lot because uh, sometimes I feel maybe I'm like a split personality as well, because in some ways I'm super extrovert. If you ask my friends about me, they'll say I am. But in some ways, I'm also very introvertish. I like my own time and space. I like my alone time, etc. And I have also, I think because of all of this and the way I am and my thoughts, etc., and I found it very hard to share with people initially, that I used to feel lonely. And loneliness at that time for me was about a certain condition that I was put in. So it had to do with the outside. I wasn't looking inside me to find why am I lonely. So it was something that had to be cured, that had to be rectified, that had to be changed. It took me a very long time to realize that some of the loneliness, not all of them, come from the self and is not social. Some of the loneliness, of course, is social. And the fact that it is just like a state of being, and you don't have to recover from it necessarily unless uh, it's playing havoc with your mental health. And that's why it's very important to also probably seek help when you feel the burden of loneliness and you're unable to deal with it. Then seeking help is, I think, the best way to be, because then somebody can help you understand what it is about.
Yeah.
uh,
So,
yeah
I've just learned these new terms and I like to use them.
yeah
That, you talk about a nesting partner, right?
yeah
That
yeah
you live with
yeah
and
yeah
negotiating all that. And there's jealousy as well, right? And you said jealousy
oh
is
yes,
natural.
the
And
green one, stop. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah,
And, you said that even you've encountered like, something like, oh, that's our bed and our space or whatever it is. So,
yeah,
if, like, how do you deal with jealousy or does that come up? Some people
of
you said
course, of
don't,
course.
don't
Jealousy
feel it.
always
Yeah.
comes up
Okay.
in various degrees.
Yeah.
I think it's like this. It's the same thing like loneliness. You know that whether you see jealousy, you try and understand what is jealousy, what is that emotion actually. And I've spent a lot of time working with jealousy because I used to be super jealous. And for me, jealousy, when I used to get one of those, जैसे बोलते हैं ना दौड़ा पड़ता है, when I would get one of those jealous
It's like,
faces,
yeah.
it would spiral so badly. I would get physically ill, really. I think I'm a very proud person. I have super ego, so jealousy hit me even more. And when I started unraveling what is it about, I realized that jealousy has to do with things deeply embedded in you. It was my insecurities, my feeling of being displaced or abandoned, my inability to see somebody's heart as a land with more than one chair to sit on. Which, if I saw that place having just one chair, it meant if somebody else was sitting on it, I wasn't sitting there, right? I was displaced and abandoned. I realize it has also to do with how we are fed into a competitive circuit from the time we are children. Your parents feel very happy when you bring a prize home, huh? So then slowly over a period of time, you figure that your self-worth is when you win something. And therefore, when you don't have something, means you've lost it. So this, you lose a person to someone, right? And you win a person from someone, as if that someone is a trophy, for two, it's like a medal to win or to lose. And then obviously when you've lost, you feel terrible because all your self-worth has gone because you've lost that person. So the person spending time with another partner is you temporarily losing that person. It's not that. See, what's funny about jealousy is it's not that that person would have been with you at that time anyway, but the fact that the person. So there are lots of reasons, and I go into details in the book about how I've tried to understand jealousy. That it's about trespassing, property, etc., etc. Plus feeling abandoned, plus feeling displaced, plus feeling competitively having lost, plus thinking of love as a zero sum game. Um, I'm a Bangali, so Rasgulla is the easiest metaphor that comes to me. Like in a dabba, you have 5 rasgullas only. So if you're giving somebody two, means you're getting less. That kind of. I figured the best way for me, and again, people deal with it differently. There are two things that one has to learn about jealousy. One, how to deal with your own, and two, how to help a partner. And I talk about it in details in the book, but basically understand where it is coming from. Is it insecurity? Is it competition? Is it sense of abandonment? What is the root of that jealousy? And then own the responsibility for that feeling, that it is your feeling and you have the responsibility for it. Don't blame the partner for it. It's not the partner's action. It's about how you feel about that action that is making this happen. Talking to the partner helps if the partner is willing. Uh, just easing it out, staying with it, letting it settle in your body, thinking of it as something that you will feel. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to blame your partner, throw it at that person, create a ruckus, or are you going to let it pass, let it settle, rationalize with it? Think of the reasons. Think of how much your partner actually loves you in the times that are good, that you consider good. All of this actually has eased my difficulties with jealousy over time. I realize another thing, I feel more jealous when a partner's partner is able to give them an experience or something that I am unable to. So, for example, if my partner loves motorcycling and they have another partner who they do it with, and I'm not a biker, then that becomes a itch. Or say my partner is an academic and they have another partner with whom they write books together, academic books together, and I'm like, I can't do that with that person.
Or
So
just share that
those,
language, no? Yeah.
yes, to share experiences,
Yeah, yeah.
etc.
Hmm.
And those are. But then once you think through it and think through what you probably do with them that the other partner can't, there are all these ways in which you settle your mind, you talk to yourself. And over a period of time, I mean, I hope to get to a point of compulsion one day, which is in the polyamory world, where people will feel happy about their partner spending time with another. I've gotten to that place, close to that place, but not yet, with some partners, where there's great trust and loyalty and commitment. I feel happy when they've spent time with another partner and they felt fulfilled. I feel happy that I see that happiness in them and try to have a share in that happiness. But I must say it's hard. And I like doing it. I mean, what's life without a few hard things to do?
Yeah, of course. It should be a little messy.
It should be a little messy, a little adventurous. You should
Yeah.
fail at some things. I mean, I'm happy to confess that so many times I've failed in, and given my partners a hard time. And and then we worked through things.
Yeah, but I like what you said, one thing about, that there's one chair and you've been displaced. So actually there are many chairs, right?
Yes.
Your chair is still there.
So hard. And I have spoken to so many monogamous people, and one would think that, oh, why? So we get asked about this jealousy question, as polyamorous people. But so people assume monogamous people don't get jealous. And they are jealous of so many things. Their husbands or spouses, partners, wives may. So the worst case scenario is somebody is cheating in that relationship. And you suddenly discover it after 17 years of living with somebody because you pick up a stray phone call or you see a message or something. That's how a lot
Yeah.
of people,
Or a
unfortunately,
long hair on a shirt.
have.
That's what, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And you discover this. So that's the worst cases. Let's not talk about worst cases. Let's talk about the best cases where people are actually loyal, committed, truly, honestly to each other. I've seen spouses get jealous about parents, spending time with parents, siblings, hobbies, traveling with girlfriends or boyfriends, even children. I've seen husbands being jealous of their kids because their wife is spending more time with the kids. So jealousy is not something that only polyamorous people have to deal with. I think, polyamorous people should do workshops with others saying, this is how we handle it. So when you're feeling it, please do this, and you can handle it.
Yeah, great idea. And you know what you said, it's like being mindful, just sitting with the feeling, accepting it, letting it go through you, and trying to get to the crux of what the problem is, whether it's fear
Yeah.
of abandonment, insecurity,
Yeah,
whatever
and
it is.
I also think, Anuradha, there is a very deep, simple thing. You go into a restaurant, okay, and you order food. And then you look at the next table and you think that plate is better than mine. And you start feeling jealous of that plate. Okay. The idea that somebody else has something that either you want or that you did cannot have right now, etc. This, I think there's intrinsically something really basic about this feeling that we need to control as much as possible. Because there's always going to be somebody with more than what you have, more than, other than,
Yeah.
etc. You know, so
Yeah. You
it's a
also,
good practice.
yeah. You also spoken about commitment and how it works, and a lot of the people that you've interviewed, they've also talked about it. So,
Yeah.
I want to understand that, and I'll just read out,
Mm.
from your book, that my concept of commitment is, when you're interviewing somebody, they've
Yeah,
said,
yeah,
my
yeah,
concept of commitment is to be with the person for the long haul. I'm committed to making this work no matter what
yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
That's my
Shankar
idea.
had said this, right? I think
Yeah.
Shankar has said this.
Yeah,
Yes.
Shankar has said
Yeah,
it. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And that's my idea of loyalty too. It doesn't matter who my partner has sex with or has feelings for or loves. I will be there,
Yeah.
right? When they need me, I will make it a point to be there. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
What I used to find really weird about monoamory or monogamy is that loyalty and commitment is defined by what you will not do with others. Like, I will not have sex with others. I will not fall in love with others. I will. So, it's not defined by what, suppose we are in a partnership, it's not defined by what I will do with you. It's about what I will not do with other
not do.
people
Yeah.
that will define. I used to find that really weird. But why is it about other people? It's like, it's almost like drawing the boundary and saying where you will not go rather than saying where you will go, actually. So the way I think commitment, loyalty is different, trust, all these things, they're interrelated, are different in polyamorous relationship is because this other thing is not there. Where I want, because polyamory assumes I can go anywhere, right? There's no boundary. Boundaries are only defined by the people in the relationship, the various people in the relationship. There's no boundary that is set from before. Uh, Loyalty, commitment, etc., is defined by what will happen between us. When will I be there? What can you take me for granted for? Where can you trust me? If you fall ill, will I be there? And this also depends on the intensity of the relationship, of course, how much you're committing to each other, but also about some practical things like you might have a primary partner, but that primary partner may be in a different city. In which case, somebody who's not your primary partner, but one of your significant others who's in this city is your go to person for something that is more like a medical emergency or something like that, right? Uh, and these are also things that, so your commitment, loyalty, trust, again, like everything else in polyamory, is defined by the people and what you will make of it in that relationship, rather than carving it out as a negative space of what you will not do with others. Um, Also, this links it to longevity of relationships. In monogamy or monoamory, till death do us part is the kind of, I mean, among Hindus, to saat janam tak saath rahega kind of
Yeah,
thing
yeah.
is the ultimate ideal, right? Even people who don't believe in these, there is an expectation when you get into a relationship that this is going to last forever. Nobody gets into a relationship thinking, anyway, it is time pass. When you're thinking seriously about a relationship, I think what happens in polyamory is when you get into a relationship, you concentrate more on what that relationship is going to be and how is it going to look like, rather than how long is it going to last. That does not mean we don't build long-term enduring relationships. Of course we do. But longevity is not necessarily the first thing to look for. You build a relationship, it also has its own journey. And because of so many things, that journey may shift, change because of other things that are there in your life, your job, your hobbies, your responsibilities, shifting of cities, all of that. I know a polyamorous person whose parents grew old, and then one of the parent passed away, and the other parent was not capable of looking after themselves. So this person had to move in with that parent. That changed so many dynamics in their life in the way that they were polyamorous. And so there are so many other things in our lives. This is not the only thing we do, which is love our partners, right? We lead fully other lives of work and our other responsibilities. All of those things come in when we are thinking of commitment, trust, loyalty as well.
Yeah. So, it's just a thought, just, at any point, if I sound voyeuristic or something, just stop me.
No, not at all.
Yeah. But, I'm just thinking that, when you talk about commitment, it
Mm.
also means that, you go out on dates, you share time together. So, when you have multiple partners,
Yeah,
where, and it's not just like we said, it's not casual. You're not
yeah,
just hooking
yeah,
up, right?
yeah.
So, how does it work? Because you when you're committed, then there's also an emotional investment, a time
Of course,
investment.
of
You
course,
plan
of
a
course.
dinner date,
Yes.
plan to
Yeah.
travel. There's so
Or
many
you
things.
holiday together. Yeah,
Yeah,
of
yeah,
course.
yeah. So, when
So,
you have so
one
many,
thing is that relationships require effort, time, etc. And we all know in our busy lives, even managing one relationship is tough, right? People don't find time for it with children, etc. So, more than one is tougher if you want to give it that time. It requires a lot of effort and time. And so, therefore, when people imagine polyamorous people having a bevy of partners,
yeah,
that's not true. We just have more than one, which can also be two or three, or the possibility of two or three.
yeah,
And there's also a lot of dating. So, for example, I don't actively date because honestly, because I don't have the time. I have the partners that I have, and if organically something happens, but I don't go on active dates only because, um, like I'm not on any apps, etc., because I don't have the time. I would have loved to. If I was younger and had more time on my hand, I would have certainly loved to. Also, apps scare me a little bit. I'm very appreciative. I applaud people who are on apps and do it because, my generation, I'm 53. We just met at friends' places, or friends introduced us to people and we
yeah,
liked it. Um, so friends of friends is where your dating pool starts.
right.
Um, I think there is need for some amount of planning so that it doesn't clash, so that everybody's comforts are looked into. And that's one of the reasons why I love being a solo polyamorous where I don't live with anybody and I don't share my domestic space with anybody, because it allows me this freedom to make these choices with less um, scrutiny and effort that than someone who's living with a primary partner or a nesting partner. In that case, it is harder for them. So the person in the book who's talked about, who is married to one person and has another significant other, for them it is more difficult to manage. I suppose than it is for me.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, because there's a home where you're living with a partner and so many things.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, and it is harder to kind of make that kind of space. I know, and there's a couple of interviewees in the book talk about that. How so some of them have a rule that you only bring another partner home when the your domestic partner, your nesting partner, is traveling, or you have a policy that no, you can't bring other partners home. You find other spaces to meet them, but the home is only for. So different people define it differently.
yeah,
um or there are, and also it is the partnerships are at different levels of intimacies, right? So then there are people who don't have primary partners, who may have two or three partners, but all of them are sort of equidistant, and they don't name one partnership more important than others. Then there are people who are in triads where three people are involved in a relationship together, and that of course is slightly more complicated. And again, what is defined, so for example, if three people are in a relationship together, all three of them love each other, do they do all holidays together or not? That's something they decide, and they figure out how they want to do it. And I do know people like that who um, initially would do all holidays together and then figured that that's not how it works for them, and then they take turns to do holidays depending on who wants to go where. uh, so yeah, I think it is all about the openness to define some of these things ourselves, and not that always the right choices are made. Of course, we make tons of mistakes like anybody. And it's okay. You say sorry, you apologize, you hurt someone, somebody is deeply, I mean, I've done that and it's been done to me. And you explain and you basically trust that it's not done purposely to hurt you. Because that's a red flag if it's done
Yeah,
purposely.
it's the
We talked about
intention.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's otherwise that's also generosity. To be generous enough to know that you will make mistakes and so will others. You will be hurt and you will hurt others. And as long as you care about it, as long as you're willing to um, help with the healing, as well as long as you apologize and take responsibility for each other and the relationship, it's fine. We have very few years to live on this earth anyway, and it's fine.
Yeah. That's true. So, I want to discuss the red flags a bit more, but
Yes,
before that,
yes,
I just want to talk about the legal bits that you've mentioned in the book,
yeah, yeah,
and why, it's so important, like you've spoken to two lawyers, I think,
yes,
yeah,
yes,
and why it's
yeah,
important for polyamorous people to, leave a will because
yeah,
children
yeah,
that they are co-parenting maybe may not be
yeah,
theirs. The
yeah,
partner may not
yeah,
benefit. There's so many
yeah,
things. Yeah.
yeah.
And also domestic violence, you said,
Violence.
because it's not
So
registered.
before writing the book, for example, Anuradha, I never thought of the legal issues. Never. It doesn't come into, again, we come from such privilege that it
True.
doesn't enter our head, no? कि legal
Yeah.
issues भी हैं. When I started thinking about the book and I started talking to other people in the polyamory community, and I realized very few of us have thought through the legal. Then I spoke to lawyers, and among the two lawyers who are there, Arvind has also been very, very active in the and led many of the queer struggles in India. And so Arvind is very aware of many of the issues that the queer world has with the legal system. And both of them, Dolashri and who's a lawyer, and Arvind, have mentioned how it's not a question of let's change this law, let's change that law. It's the entire legal system is based on heteronormativity and monogamy. That is at the core of the foundation of the legal system that deals with relationships in India. And while small things like the live-in relationship being acknowledged, the living arrangements of people being seen as having legal sanctions is being slowly acknowledged and brought into the legal sphere, the heteronormativity and the monogamy part is still the same. That hasn't changed. Unless these two things can change, you cannot have. So the first step, as Arvind very beautifully puts it, the first struggle was to decriminalize homosexuality, which is what happened down with 377. The second was the Marriage Act, which still is a struggle for all of us, the marriage equality law. And he says that then the third part is to look at, so then what happens to polyamorous people? And the many things that the legal system, for example, today don't look at for polyamorous people. Abuse is one thing, inheritance, who's responsible, who is your, sort of who takes decisions for you in a medical kind of scenario. All these are thrown in the air. And other difficulty would be that because each polyamory situation is different, the definition is different. Unlike monogamy, which is one fixed thing, how do you build a law around so many variables? Is also a question. But it would be fun for lawyers to think through this. I just wanted to have it in the book because I felt that as polyamorous people, we should know, and take the recourse. Like writing a will is probably one thing. The other is you may not have a domestic abuse law that protects you from your partner or your partner's partner, but there is always other laws of battery and other kinds of violence that you can file for. So
Yeah, it's an important subject. At least it's good that it's included in the book.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. It's
yeah,
something we have to think about. Yeah.
yeah. So, you've mentioned red flags and you've mentioned starter tips, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe some red
Two
flags.
one green flag chapter and one red flag
Yeah,
chapter.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
what is some red flags? You've said that polyamory is spoken of only in terms of multiple sexual relationships and not as a way of building relationships. That is a red flag, right? When a
Yes.
partner does that. So, so what are some red flags?
So okay, the book has many. Let me talk about just three that I think that's coming to
Yeah,
my
yeah.
mind as most important. The first is that, like I said, that when you enter into a polyamorous relationship, the terms of engagement, the boundaries are defined by two people, or three people, or four people, as the case may be. Now, if there are changes that will happen, then those in these rules or boundaries, then they need to be discussed, consented, etc. If any of these rules or boundaries are crossed without the consent of other people, not once, not twice, but time again, because once or twice you can make a mistake and apologize, like I said, and we are generous with each other. But if it's happening multiple number of times and it is hurting somebody in the equation, that's a red flag. So that would be my first red flag, that um, you are not staying committed to what you've committed. It's very simply that. So that's the first red flag. The second red flag for me is similar to other relationship, is gaslighting somebody. That not taking somebody's feelings seriously and saying, hey, no, you're just being silly, or you're just. So if you say I'm hurting, or you say I don't like this, or I'm suspicious that you're not doing what you're saying, or you say I'm jealous and we need to talk about this, and the other person says, hey, that's not even important. Why is it even like you're just like that, or you're just too emotional, or just or so that kind of gaslighting, I think, is problematic. And I think that is something that one should look at. And the third thing, which I think is most important, is nobody should ever do anything, be, thing that you don't want to. You cannot be forced into anything, either by saying that, oh, this is more progressive. And I've had, once I started writing about polyamory openly, so many people reached out to me privately saying that it's fine for you to write about this. But do you know what's happened with me? And I was horrified at some of those instances where mostly cis heterosexual male men in our sort of patriarchal society um, take advantage of this, oh, I'm polyamorous, just to play the field. Listen, if somebody wants to play the field, it's their business. They want to do it with people. I'm not judging that. But what I am judging very much is putting it under this garb of polyamory, because it just sounds more legit, slightly more legit. And if you're cheating, you're just cheating. That's not polyamory. If you want to have multiple sexual relationships with many people, fine, that's wonderful. You're exploring. But don't give it the name of polyamory, because where there is no love, you can't have amari, it means love, essentially. Um, so I think coercing people to say that, oh, you say you're a feminist and you're so modern and you're so contemporary, and why do you believe in these old world kind of, regressive things like monogamy? If somebody is saying that, please avoid that person, because then the intentions are certainly actually it was said to a friend of mine that she's not progressive enough or feminist enough because she's not polyamorous. And I hugely resented that. I was just so angry with the person who had said that, because you are actually creating a bad name for polyamory by saying that. So yeah, I would say these are the three top flags. You read the book to know more.
Yes, absolutely.
Top red flags. Yeah. Yeah.
And you've also said that, that partners talking about their other partners to their primary partner or whatever, because some may
Yeah.
not be comfortable with it.
Exactly. There
Yeah.
again, you need conditioning and sorry, you need consent, and the other person has to agree. one couple said it very beautifully in one of the interviews, where they said that, one person in that relationship uh, used to feel very honest by pouring everything out and feeling, हाँ मैं तो बहुत honest हूँ, I'm very honest. The other person is saying, but I have to give you consent to be that honest with me. If I can't handle it, or I'm having difficulty, or I just want headlines. So there are relationships where people say, look, don't give me details. Give me just headlines. That's all I want. You know, I know there are polyamorous relationships where people say, only tell me that this time is not mine. Don't tell me where you're going, with whom, what are you doing. I don't want to know. Just tell me that's not my time. And then there are couples or triads or people in a sort of polycule who discuss in much more detail, in much more intimacies, emotional, physical, whatever. But all that also has to. So if I'm sharing with you about another partner, I need permission from you to share. I also need permission from the other partner to share. So I think polyamory is a great lesson in figuring consent.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds like it. Yeah. Okay, some starter tips. Would you like to get into that?
Depends on, I hope that people who are either curious to find out what polyamorous lives are about, do some reading, talk to some polyamorous people who are at least open and out. And not just this book, but there are many books written. I mean, this is the first one in India, but there are many books and online resources that you can find. So read them, understand if it is for you, because it's not just the good parts, right? It's also the more difficult parts. And if that's a journey you would like to take, and once you decide, if you're already in a monoamorous relationship, how does your partner feel about it? Do you want to do it together? It's great if you want to do it together, because then you also have that support, and check-ins with each other as to how you're
First
feeling.
of all, sorry to interrupt, like, how
Yeah,
do you even know whether you should even explore it? Who should explore it?
I think multiple kinds of people. People who are not um, who feel that monoamory is not containing them, who feel that they want to love more people, and who feel attracted and feel love for others, but are not figuring out the ways to do it. So they should. Secondly, people who have, for the longest time, found themselves trapped and uh, feel like a bonsai, like you're you're having to control too many desires, too many, you're not happy, you're not content. Such people should probably give it a shot. Um, there are also people who have a very questioning mind. They question the basis and the foundations of rules, conventions, traditions. For them, it might be an interesting um, way to be. For those who want to go on adventures and journeys with relationships, for them, so there are different, your point of entry could be discontent, curiosity, a sense of adventure, a sense of breaking rules. You could come from any point. Your entry point could be anything. My only thing is just know a little more about it. Before you venture in, because chances of you getting hurt or you hurting other people, um, it's a it's a journey like any other, and you have to learn the terrain a little bit. Otherwise, you're going to hurt yourself or hurt other people. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So finally, Arundhati, like, why polyamory? And you've mentioned so many Bollywood songs throughout your book, which have resonated with you.
Yes. Because I grew up on Bollywood songs.
Yeah, yeah.
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 Mm.
So, one is Rajni Gandha you've mentioned, no?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It's a
yeah.
beautiful film,
Yeah,
actually. Yeah.
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 So, like, why polyamory for you? Like, if you would.
Yeah. So for different people, different reasons. Um, I think I'll begin with why for me. For me, because it's the same reason that you or anybody else falls in love. because I see beauty, compassion, courage, honesty in people. I feel attracted to that. And then I fall in love with them and their ways. The only difference between me and a monogamous person is a monogamous person probably says that one is my quota and I don't have a quota. So I don't say one is enough. I allow myself to fall in love as much as I want to. But the reasons are the same. It's because I find people attractive because of their courage, compassion, kindness, care, beauty, all of that. It also helps me feel it makes my life more honest and truthful to myself and to others. And that's another reason why I feel a lot of people in the polyamory community have chosen this way. Many of them have come through monoamory and landed here. The third reason is I feel it. I have many people in me. There are different Arundhatis that live here. And polyamory gives me the option to have all those Arundhatis manifest themselves, sometimes with different people. And one is sometimes surprised at the other. And it's lovely to see how these different people manifest themselves when they are in relationship with one particular person. And I think having multiple relationships helps me, do that. Fourth reason, I can shape a relationship, mold it according to the desires of the people involved. And I don't have to use a mold that is there already fixed, कि इसी ढांचे में बनना है. Yeah, I think all of these reasons, and of course, my great dislike for one.
Yeah, that's a great note to end on. Thank you so much, Arundhati, for sharing your journey with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anuradha, for doing this. It's wonderful.